All right, everybody. Well, appreciate you joining us today, this afternoon or morning if you're still on the West Coast. We are really excited that everyone's here to hear about using SMS to boost engagement rates, specifically talking about how we can do so in Eloqua. But if you are not an Eloqua customer, don't dismay. We will be talking about SMS in general, and we'll talking about Eloqua specifically. And we are also in the process of updating our technology so that it integrates with other marketing automation systems such as Marketo and potentially HubSpot in the future. So just a quick rundown of the agenda here. So we're going to talk a bit first about why SMS. What are the reasons why customers and companies should be using SMS? Get into really kind of the top 3 use cases that we're seeing our customers use SMS for, and they're definitely pertaining to both B2B use cases and B2C. We'll talk a little bit about automating SMS using bots, and I'm going to give you a demo of a bot that we created to just kind of showcase what a bot functionality can do. And then we'll talk a bit about some of the different things to keep in mind when you're thinking about using SMS globally. That's a lot of questions we get commonly asked for. And then lastly, some Q&A. So I figured why not use SMS to enable our Q&A. So if you'll just text any questions you have to the number on the screen, that's actually my cell phone number, just to be perfectly honest. Feel free to do that throughout the presentation, and then we'll cover some of those. We've got a couple questions that were commonly asked by customers that we'll kind of start with, and if there's any specific ones, we can certainly get into those questions as well. So again, appreciate everybody joining, and thanks so much. Just a bit about myself. My name is David York. I'm the founder and the CEO of Sureshot. My background is really steeped in using and selling and deploying marketing automation in different MarTech. So I was a customer of marketing automation back starting in 2003. Since from there went and spent a number of years working directly at Eloqua, and then have been in the partner ecosystem of marketing automation for about the last 8 years. So I'm excited to share some of this information and content with you. So let's jump right into why SMS. I'm going to give you basically 3 statistics that I think most of you may or may not already know, but they are really kind of the critical, piece of this about why we think and believe every customer and every company should really be taking advantage of SMS. And the first one is that 90% of SMS messages are read within the first 3 minutes. So this is taken from Frost and Sullivan's study that was done a couple years ago, and the data really speaks for itself, right? In the world of SMS, in a world of cluttered communications, specifically with email, being able to break through the clutter effectively and do so within a relatively short time span is critical for your success as a marketer. So there's a lot of untapped potential around customer engagement as it relates to SMS. Stat number 2, just to reinforce really what stat number 1 is saying, is that the average person looks at their phone 150 times a day. Of course, none of us do that. I know none of you do that. I know I certainly am not guilty of ever doing that. I say that, of course, with a chuckle. But the reality of it is that, the handheld devices and the smartphones are, completely captivating people's attention spans. And so leveraging native functionality like SMS that gives people alerts and things like that, and doing so, obviously email is available on the smartphone as well, but this is just reinforcement to the fact that it's a mobile world that we're living in. And so finding more ways to engage from a mobile standpoint is obviously going to be critical even now, but as we move forward, because I don't think that this is going to really be decreasing significantly over time. And the last one is talking a bit about the even greater than 90%, is that 98% of SMS messages are read compared to 28% for email. So that's over the lifespan. We got 90% within 3 minutes, but even beyond that, as we're kind of thinking about over a period of time, 98% of those messages actually get read, and the average open rates for email is about 20%. So there's some very compelling data, and there's many other statistics that talk about SMS and how it is, from an engagement standpoint, significantly better than email. Of course, if we all start bombarding folks with SMS, these stats are going to drop. But as far as the delta between SMS and many of the traditional communication channels that folks are using today, there's definitely a lot of ground to be gained, and SMS is really one of the ways that we can do that relatively quickly and easily. So let's jump into some use cases and talk about those. These are the best use cases that we see our customers using and that we've used ourselves, and so I wanted to just kind of jump into those. So use case number one is specifically around event-related notifications, and this really focuses in and works for both B2C and B2B. So some examples here of how event-related notifications may work. Trade shows, notifying people that are not checking emails. So if you're on the trade show floor, these people are in transit or in movement. We've seen customers do things like booth giveaways, or if they have a speaking session or a specific reception that they're sponsoring. Some examples over here of booth giveaways that we've done, where we send an MMS of a poker chip and then drive people to our booth to give them a poker chip for some events that we attended in Vegas. Webinars and roadshows. So this is really about breaking through the inbox clutter to increase attendance and increase the number of people that you've got coming to these types of events. If you had entered your phone number into the form for this webinar, you would have received a SMS notification about an hour ago reminding you of the event and sending you the link that you can even log into it, knowing that, hey, you may be using GoToMeeting on your phone. And meeting and appointment reminders. So creating a better customer experience and reducing the amount of no-shows. So confirmations for meetings, and not just kind of delineating between something that's more of a webinar where it's a larger audience versus something that's very specific, kind of one-to-one, right? You have a meeting with a specific person and we're sending a notification to remind you of that meeting, or you have an appointment. Some of you may get these from your doctor's offices now. Again, their goal is to create a better experience, but more importantly for them, no-shows cost a lot of people money. And so they want to, increase the engagement and the rate that people are going to attend those particular meetings or appointments. The other thing you can do from this standpoint is also offer things like schedule changes. So you can create ease and less friction in the customer experience, where you may be able to say, hey, can't attend, reply back with this, or click on this link and make a change to that. So you're making the customer experience even more seamless and really putting it forth in front of that customer that you're doing everything you can to service them better. All right, use case number two, SMS nurturing campaigns. So this one's interesting because this is where what a lot of customers initially think is like, hey, we want to do email and SMS, or do some kind of combined nurture. We did for this webinar, as an example, we used email reminders and SMS reminders, kind of combining those two together. But one of the things we're seeing customers do is using SMS as an exclusive way to nurture customers, not just kind of a combined effort with email, but actually using SMS exclusively as an entire workflow or nurture flow that is just communicating with someone through SMS. So here's some examples and thoughts around that, right? So if you want to engage entirely new channels or reach different audiences or personas that may not be using email or may not be accustomed to using email regularly, that's one reason why you might look at this. Or you can deliver valuable content in obviously, as we already proved with our statistics, a highly engaged channel. And customers are doing this in a few different ways. Some customers are actually using inbound SMS to activate and enroll people into specific campaigns. So one of our customers does this where they, it's a consumer company, but they actually say, okay, look, if you want to get these updates or these reminders, then text in this message or this keyword to this particular phone number, and then it enrolls them into that SMS campaign, and they're continued to nurture. As customers are as you're using video more regularly in the different campaigns that you're running, this is a really interesting way to nurture using video, because obviously you're not really trying to drive someone to a web page, but you may be driving them to YouTube and things like that. So we have customers in the healthcare space that are doing this, and they're running campaigns to alert people around health issues or pharmaceutical options, and they're driving people to video campaigns and that are being able to be leveraged and used and accessed from a mobile device. And then you may also have, as I mentioned previously, as kind of non-email personas based on what vertical market you're in. So if you're we have some folks that we work with that deal in the agriculture space. Well, people in agriculture are not necessarily sitting in front of a computer very often, so being able to engage with them via SMS is a way to get better access to them while they may out and about, not necessarily sitting at a desk or sitting in a single location. All right, so use case number 3, and this one's the really interesting and fun one that we like, is SMS surveys. And this is really when we start talking about using of bots and things like that. So the ability to really engage and effectively collect information from people using SMS is really kind of one of the next things that we see on the frontier of mobile engagement, is being able to do so in a relatively easy and automated fashion. And some of the different ways that we've seen this and are starting to see this being used is the ability to collect real-time feedback from users. So if you are, for instance, at an event, that person's not checking their email, or they might not be logging into something, or in a traditional environment, but you want to be able to collect real-time feedback from them. You can do that very, very easily and effectively using SMS. If you've just had a meeting or an appointment and you want that person to provide you feedback on the quality of that appointment or how they thought it went, you can do that really, really effectively using SMS, because you're getting them right at the point of exiting that particular engagement, and now you want to collect information from them immediately, and you're not going to have to worry about, are they checking their email, are they sitting down, are they in this particular place? You can really do that really, really quickly. This can also be used to augment online surveys, or to, again, engage kind of those non-digital types of customers. So if you're wanting to engage people online, but you also want to see if you can kind of capture the audience a little bit more from just the online side, and maybe use an SMS bot or an SMS survey to do that. That's one way to kind of like increase that response rate and that capture rate. It could be something as simple as, hey, we want to send people to a survey, but more and more we're seeing the engagement from a entire survey being delivered into the SMS side. And again, there's numerous use cases for this. Customer feedback support, if you want people to sign up or enroll in different things, there's a lot of different things. All right, so that's a great segue into automation with SMS bots, and I think that's really the kind of an interesting element here, and one that we want to showcase here. So if you've ever interacted with an SMS bot, you may or may not have. What you'll note is that it's a very highly dynamic and engaging experience. As I mentioned previously, there's a variety of different use cases here. You can, it can be for a survey. You could use it for lead generation, for events, different types of signups, customer support, a lot of different ways you can use this. And what's also great is that you can use these bots to kind of create flexible outcomes. So are we submitting data? Do we just need to submit data to a specific source afterwards? Are we going to use this to maybe, call that person, play a recorded message, or even in cases of customer support, we can actually facilitate connection to live agents right from the cell phone to, someone who may be in a call center. So that can all be done, very, very seamlessly on the back end from a bot standpoint. And from my perspective, I just think it's kind of fun, at least for now. There's not enough of this out there that people are getting super inundated with it, so it still kind of creates a fun experience. So with that, I'm going to jump over and actually showcase the bot that we built, just so you can see kind of the interaction here. So I'm going to go ahead and reply back to that with my name. So let's just put my name in here. All right, great. It knows my name now. Can I ask you a couple of questions? Sure. Oh, okay. Well, what company do I work for? All right, so I work for Sureshot. And on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to use? Oh, well, I think it's pretty high for me. I'm going to go ahead and say 10. Yes, I do understand the value of SMS, and so I'm going to send you a case study on how one of our customers using SMS. Is that okay? Yes. So here's that's just a quick, simple example of a bot, and we've just created that as a demo. And if you text into that number, you can actually experience that. There's actually different responses for different answers and things of that nature. But it's a quick and simple example of how to use a bot to automate a survey and experience. The great part about that bot is when that bot is finished interacting with someone, we actually submit all of that data directly into our marketing database, in this case, Eloqua. It sends out a notification, and then it stores all that information against a particular contact if we're linking that to someone's email address. So there's a lot of power in that experience, and as I mentioned, it is pretty interesting and interactive, and you are able to capture information really, really quickly, and it's kind of frictionless to the end user. If from my perspective, it's kind of like, oh, I'm interacting with a computer, but it's kind of creating like this personalization. So all right, so moving on from bots, because we're flying through this, I want to make sure we leave some time for some questions here. Going global with SMS, we get asked a lot of questions about this, and so I felt it was something that was pertinent to cover. Here's kind of the lay of the land, or some things that you need to know. So the carriers we work with, and most of the major carriers like Twilio, support sending messages to about 150 different countries around the world. Most of them are, most countries have phone numbers that are available, so you're using local in-country phone numbers. You can, basically deliver messages from a phone number that is looks like it's from somewhere local. It's not like you're sending an international message, so that's helpful for engagement. And then you can actually kind of support two different things from an SMS standpoint. You can support two-way SMS, which is kind of the example I gave, where it's, hey, we're going to send you a message and you can reply back, and we can kind of have different messages coming back and forth using a phone number. Or one thing that is supported internationally, which is really interesting, is the ability to do kind of a single one-way SMS. And when you do one-way SMS, you can actually support, it actually supported a capability called alphanumeric ID. So if you notice, most in the States, and this is again specific to us, when you get a message, you are receiving it from a specific phone number, either a 10-digit number, or you may be getting SMS messages from a 5- or 6-digit number, which is called a short code. Internationally, when you want to send, you can use alphanumeric, where you can do one-way messaging, just outbound messaging, and you can basically have the message appear that it's coming from a name or an entity, a company name, rather than just that number. So we have some customers that are doing this in different parts of the world, and they send the messages, and it shows up from to the recipient that it's coming from company X. And that's a really interesting and neat way to brand when you're thinking about going international. And then one other thing to note is that the cost and the coverage really varies by country. So if you think about, SMS, it is, there's a lot of kind of layers to it on the back end. The good news is that the gateway companies like Twilio and some others, they are managing all of that for you, and they're managing all the relationships with all the different carriers and the messages and making sure they're getting to the widest audience at a country by country level. So, but that does, mean that there's always a little bit of variance from a cost perspective, and coverage may vary based on different carriers at different places. And one of the things we work with customers on is helping them kind of navigate through that process as it relates to going global. All right, so just a couple more slides here, and then we'll jump into a Q&A. So from a product standpoint, obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the SMS product that we provide. We do provide integrations to Eloqua, and we're also in the process of creating an integration to Marketo, as I mentioned. We have multiple integrations to different gateways. So Twilio is one of the largest gateways, Nexmo, which is owned by Vonage. And then we have local providers like Burst, which is head up in Australia, and we integrate to other local providers as customers' needs for those local providers arise. From a capability standpoint, we support like very, very high degree of personalization, the ability to shorten URLs on the fly, and we're also adding in tracking for those URLs, so integrated tracking of every URL that you sent so that you can actually identify which recipient is clicking through your URLs and start to see conversion and response rates from your messages. Lots of functionality around auto responses and keywords. Think about all the different experiences you've probably had with SMS. Text this keyword into this number, and then it does different things. And then we also just log all of these messages, outbound and inbound, into your marketing automation system, so that you're able to use that for reporting, segmentation, driving the next step in the campaign based on did they respond, did they not, so on and so forth. And so our SMS capabilities is really part of a bigger, broader solution that we provide around customer engagement, specifically for the marketing operations folks, the folks that are doing marketing on a day-to-day basis. So we provide a set of tools that help folks in regards to data management. SMS falls into that campaign execution area, and then also customer life cycle. So what's happening after the fact, how many times have I touching folks, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a lot of customers, and those customers are seeing great results. So I won't bore you going through these one by one, but Vistage, from an SMS standpoint, has seen tremendous amount of lift and response rates by adding SMS to their previously email-only event reminders and campaigns, and that's a specific example that really relates to this particular channel. All right, so I've got some time for questions here. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left. Happy to answer some specific questions if you want to text any in. While I'm waiting for any to come in, I have a couple that we are constantly asked, so we figured we'd start with those. The first one is really around compliance. So we get a lot of questions from customers around, okay, well, how do we deal with opt-ins and opt-outs and the language around compliance? So essentially, the best way to think about compliance from an SMS standpoint is to really relate it to email compliance. It's very, very similar in nature. In one case, you're wanting to showcase that you have permission to communicate with those individuals and permission to do so with via text messaging. And then you also are going to notate to that person whenever you start communicating to them that they have a way to stop receiving communications. Just like email, where you're having an opt-out link and you're having certain language that showcases that, and you have the opportunity to let that person stop receiving communications. The same holds true for SMS, and you've probably gotten messages before where it's like reply stop or stop all or help and so forth. So there's some standard messaging that goes into that from a compliance standpoint, but in its essence, it's very similar to email in many cases, and you just have to abide by those particular rules as it relates to compliance, just like you do with canned spam and so forth. All right, one other question that comes up pretty often, and this is one that we see folks being asked, is, hey, I need to get started with SMS, and how do I do that? And there's kind of two camps that people fall into when they want to get started. One is, I don't have any mobile numbers. I don't have anybody's phone number really that I have. Or the other camp is, well, I've got a bunch of phone numbers, but I have no idea if they're mobile numbers or if they're landlines and so forth. And so those are two very similar but slightly different places that people are starting from. So kind of the first one, I'll say, if you don't have any phone numbers, right, obviously the first step to that process is really beginning to start to capture those numbers. So updating your either your data sources, your data providers, to make sure you're receiving phone numbers or mobile numbers if they have them. If you have lead capture forms or sign-ups, to start adding mobile number and adding a little bit of language there around being able to communicate with them via text messaging, and things of that nature. So you're really going to want to start thinking about, at the point of interaction, the point of data capture, what are we doing to make sure that we're starting to get mobile numbers into our database so that we can start to campaign and message back to these folks. And then if you have numbers, the easiest way is basically to do something like a phone number validation. So it's a service that we offer to our customers that are just getting on board and saying, hey, I've got 250,000 names and there's X number of phone numbers. I want to be able to do that. And so we have services that we work with partners that can basically come back and say, okay, of these 100,000 phone numbers you had, these are the ones that are landlines, these are the ones that are mobile numbers, and so you're all set. So all right, well, that's really all the time we have for today. We certainly appreciate everyone's time. If you have any questions, just let me know. There was one other question that came in I'll answer. So yes, there was a question about Twilio integration as it relates to Eloqua with custom objects. So yes, the integration that we provide integrates to the custom objects in the marketing automation system. That's where all the data is stored and resides. We also integrate to pull personalization information from the custom objects that you may already be using. So quick answer to that question. All right, anybody else have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll also just provide my personal contact information here, as well as Megan Jupiter, our Director of Sales. Feel free to reach out to us directly. I'm sure we'll probably be following up with some information for you after this and a link to this recording. We certainly appreciate your time today, and thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.